afternoon and good evening to a few of you. Welcome to today's community briefing. Today is the 13th of June in 2024, and we are rapidly winding down the second quarter of the year. For those of us who are in sales and got sales goals, or you got performance goals, and for your Q2, you got just a few days to make it happen, and hopefully in 2 weeks, you are halfway towards your 2024 goals. And if you're not, like me, a couple items I'm running behind. You got to try and catch up and make it happen. And hopefully, most of you guys are planning your year out and planning things out so that you've got a track to run on, as they would say. My name is Gregory Sneed, and my company is Lifesaver Financial Services. I help my clients keep more of the money they make. And now I'm going to bring to the virtual stage the, child educator, queen, biz camp, ambassador of the community briefing, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Everyone. Thank you, Greg, for that. Today is a great day, guys. So all of the muted screen off are my students that are participating in Biz Camp Summer 2024. They're going to the future of our business world. So can you guys take yourself off mute? Not mute. Take yourself off of your screen.
Camera.
Stopping your video, if you don't want to, and then wave to everyone.
Just a momentary off camera and wave. Put your hands in the air.
Just momentarily. Everyone, come on, wave. So that might are the young people from Biz Camp 2024. They're excited about business owners, and they have some great. And so there we have it. So, all right, you guys can go off now. And I am Crystal. I am co-host of the business of the community briefing. This one was created for our community to make. We're sitting at tables making decisions for us. I am also the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars. This platform is hosted and powered by Recycling Black Dollars and the BBA, the Black Business Association, brought to you during the inspiration came about during the pandemic, just so that we had a common place that we could communicate with one another. So I want to welcome you all to the community briefing. This platform is sponsored by Los Angeles LDC, Southern California Edison, SoCal Gas, PCR, and Wells Fargo Bank. And we welcome you guys, or anyone that wants to send a donation over to our platform. We appreciate that. Please feel free to introduce yourselves. As well as Biz Camp is going on to the end of this month, which is the 29th, and the second cohort starts in July. If any of you would like to come talk to the kids, be coaches, be judges, we welcome you with open arms. The kids are amazing. We're out at Da Vinci High School, which is in El Segundo. And so there's 2 classes going on today, and we're here into the end of the summer. So with that, and we have a great team. Mr. Stephen Turner, he's not there. I can see his background, but Stephen Turner, he is the producer, and he makes sure all of you, our guests are here and got all the information. Mr. Gregory Sneed, you've met him. Our other co-host is Ms. Robin Billups. She's traveling today, and so she says hello to you all. And we have an incredible guest. I had the honor of meeting him a couple of months ago at the Black Writers on Tour, and I had him on the Business Zone. You guys, this man has an incredible program for young men, helping them grow from boys to men. And so you want to, for those of you that got programs, you definitely want him to come out and talk to your young people, because he's amazing. And with that, I'm gonna turn it back over to Greg.
Thank you, Crystal. And so as a reminder, Crystal is remote today, working off Wi-Fi, so she may come and go, get a little splotchy, but she is helping with the Biz Camp. And this Biz Camp is designed to help our young students get a introduction and a feel for what business is, how to be successful in business. And a number of her students in the past have done very, very well, have launched some business. I remember quite a few who have come and joined us on screen and been absolutely amazing. So we applaud the efforts that Crystal's doing. How long you been doing that now? Is it 15 years, 16 years, something like that?
Yeah, about 17 years. We've serviced about 1,400 kids over that time frame. This is a program through the Los Angeles Urban League. I am proud to say that Miss Rhonda and our kids just finished up their fall program, and we took first place. We swept, actually. We took first, second, and third, and then they went to regionals and they took first and second. And so now we have kids that are going to be presenting in the October in New York for the nationals, and if they win in the nationals, then they're going on to the internationals. This is a program extreme.
Right on, right on. So we definitely give her applause there for all that helping. There's plenty of things out there that can steer our youth in the wrong direction, and there's some of us in the community that are out there helping our youth to really learn and be productive both in education and business, which is going to bring us to our next guest. Surprise! Our next guest is Bobby Brown. No, not that D. Bobby Brown. Okay. Our guest today is Dr. Robert Daylin Brown. And before the broadcast, I was teasing him a little bit because I was trying to find some information on him. And look, I said, how many? Okay, Robert Brown. All right, let's improve the search. Let's do Robert D. Brown. All right, then Dr. Robert D. Brown. And there's still a bunch of them out there, but he is unique. He is special. He is one and only. And despite the commonality of the name, what he's doing for our community and what he's doing for education is absolutely phenomenal. So, Dr. Robert Daylin Brown was born here in the Southern California area, lived in Los Angeles and Inglewood. I am currently in the city of Inglewood, and he got his bachelor's of science degree in education, University of Redlands, majored in English and in math. Then he continued on and got his master's at Pepperdine. And then that wasn't enough. He went and got his doctorate at Azusa Pacific and in education. He has been teaching pretty much just about everything. He's done elementary school. I don't know if have you done early ed? I don't know if he did early ed centers, preschool.
You know what? I was a substitute teacher for kindergarten for 1 week. I'm not doing kindergarten again.
I understand that. I understand that. Right. It's a special special breed. It's interesting. Those who do elementary could not do high school, college, and those who are doing high school, college
Right.
could not deal with the with the kids. So that is a unique challenge in itself there. But he's worked at elementary school, middle school, high school, continuation schools. You guys know what that are. Have you done CDS type schools as well?
You know what? I worked for a nonprofit continuation school system that worked with gangbangers who got kicked out of the schools, and then
Yeah.
they would come to us to get their GED.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think LA Unified I think calls them CDS schools, and I do financial planning for the school district. And when I would show up to those campuses and I've got suit and tie on, they'd
Right.
all like dash because they thought I was the detective. Um, he is a college professor and lifelong educator here in Southern California, and he's worked for over 25 years in different types of educational environments, which we just covered. For the past 20 years, he's been an active member of Groove Social Fellowship Incorporated, an organization with the mission of mentoring Black men and promoting social fellowship, ethical standards, and service to underserved communities. He's also served as a former regional director and as a member of the fellowship's executive board. So please join me in welcoming to the virtual stage Dr. Robert Daylin Brown.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be here this morning. And there is a good group of you here. I am excited to talk, especially about the topic today. The one thing that Brother Greg didn't mention is that I actually went back to school last year. So I'm working on a fourth degree in training to be a therapist and a licensed clinical counselor. And that is a lot of my focus right now is mental health, especially men's mental health.
So you can't say that you don't have class, right?
You know what? I was mentioning this to Crystal in a previous show. I started school when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, and I've been in school ever since. I've never left the classroom. I'm now 51 and a half years old, and I've been in the classroom ever since. Yeah.
It's an addiction. Education. I mean, once you start to learn, you never stop learning. That
Right.
doesn't ever end. And it's in terms of increasing your education. So, kind of this is your floor for the next 15, 20 minutes or so. Kind of explain to us, the sort of the paths of education,
Right.
why that's important. We've got some of young students on there. I would maybe focus on them initially because I think Crystal said they're going to blast out of here after a few moments. Why education is important, why the system is designed to keep you away from education, and so you have to kind of fight through that because it'll encourage you not to be educated,
Mm.
but that there are some consequences and detriments to doing that. So, floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, first off, uh,
One
education is.
second.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Dr. Brown. Can you
yes.
hit? I made you the host by mistake. Can you send that back to me? Just go
I,
to the right side of your name up at the top, and just go back to be guest.
okay. The guest option is not here, but I think I could make you the host.
Make me host.
In
Right.
the upper
Thank you.
right of your
There we go.
yeah, okay, now he did it.
Okay. All right. Now I'll make sure the right person gets that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's no problem. This pandemic has gotten me very used to Zoom and online learning, and so I'm getting very familiar with the functions there. But just let me know if you need me to stop or anything.
No, go ahead.
Um, well, first off, yes, education is important to me personally, but education is an important institution in this country, primarily because the research shows that it's what we call the great equalizer. Let me say that again. Education is the great equalizer. Um, when you look at success outcomes in terms of financial success, health, when you look at political involvement, society, factors that have to do with relationships, marriage, when you look at wealth and success outcomes of all kinds, it's education that is the equalizer, shortening that gap between the haves and the have-nots. And the beautiful thing about, especially here in California, the beautiful thing about our education system is we have these many, many, many ways to access good education. Like right now, I'm a college professor. I work in the community college system, and it is my favorite, favorite, favorite place to work. I've worked in all different institutions, but the community college system as a mission has the purpose of giving back to the community. And so we have the cheapest college tuition. We have the most campuses of any system in the world, actually. And we have all different types of ways for people to reach success, whether it's through a degree, certificate, training. It doesn't matter if you are low income, high income, if you're homeless. We have ways of plugging students into the system in order to reach success. And I see what you wrote there in the chat there, Coach Greg. You're exactly right. California has, to me, the best education system. It's the least expensive. Not cheap, but the least expensive, which is a difference. That's a very important thing. All the while I believe in the power of education, I also understand that there are systems that work against some of us. And we have to learn how best to work within the system so that we can make it work for ourselves. And so we have to learn how to be advocates for ourselves and advocates for our needs so we can reach our goals. One of the things that I do besides teaching at the college is I help students become healthy adults. It's not just about learning how to write and read and finish these math classes. I also work with students on how to be financially healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy. All of these factors that we sometimes forget, they play out in my classroom and they play out with my students. And because I know those are the pillars for healthy adulthood. Those are the things that are actually going to help you succeed. Those are those intangibles that make going to class and getting those grades a little bit easier. Does that make sense to you? So when I started in education, I actually started working in that position that I mentioned earlier at a continuation school. My very first job, full-time job out of college, was 1995, teaching gangbangers in Compton who wanted to get their GED. And I wasn't much older than them. I started the job when I was 21 and a half as a teacher. And these were students who, they all got kicked out of school. They all had probation officers, but they all wanted to get their GED. They would come to us and we would put them on individual ed plans and help them graduate. And I did that for a year and a half before moving to the Inglewood School District to teach 7th and 8th grade math. And then from there, I started into the high school, started teaching high school. I taught high school for 8 years, also math. And then I took a little bit of there was a little bit of a break in there where I worked at Loyola Marymount University as assistant director of their tutoring center. And now I am in the San Bernardino Community College District, and I've been there for the last 18 years. As a professor, academic coordinator, I spent 1 year as the dean. I worked in different positions within the district, and now I love where I am now in the English department, teaching college writing, teaching African American literature, and critical thinking. I spent a little bit of time working with the Cal State system as a teacher supervisor, training future teachers. I did that with Cal State Teach online program, and I did that at Cal State University San Bernardino. And on top of all that, I married an educator. My wife, Dr. Gray, Dr. Selena Gray, she is an educator. I think we are in competition to see who can get the most degrees and certificates. Right now, she's an amazing person, educator, science teacher, researcher, graduated from Stanford with that doctorate degree. And both of us see education as our contribution to the revolution.
So who's smarter?
You
Remember,
know
you're
what?
recorded now. You're
I'm
recorded.
gonna say that I am smart enough not to answer that question. And because she's a year older, I got to give her that. I respect my elders. You got me on that one, Coach Greg.
So, share with us a little bit about math. Historically, math is an area of challenge for the for our community. So what did you experience in terms of the students you inherited, and share with us some of the techniques that you might have employed to have the students kind of embrace that. And remember, you've got some students that are on right now. So speak to us, but speak to them in terms of about the importance of math. I occasionally will have done some career days and at schools, and I tell everybody, math built this classroom. You can't. There's a lot of things that you cannot do without math. So math is very important. So share a little bit about that, how
Right.
you make that transition. And
Um, you know what? I'm going to tell you all the truth. And all you students on here, I know you got your videos off. I'm not sure what you're doing because I can't see you, but hopefully you can hear me because I'm about to tell you some things that might be what we call counterintuitive. Um, First off, I went to school as an engineering major and switched to English and creative writing halfway through. But I took all of these math classes and automatically became a math minor. So I have a background in English and math, which is rare because you hear all these people tell us that you're either a math person or you're a reading, writing person or an artistic person. All of that is a myth because we have the ability to learn anything at any time. Okay. You have what it takes to be a logical, reasonable, rational thinker, and you can succeed in math. And you have what it takes to be an awesome writer, a voracious reader, and you can succeed in the humanities. When I taught math for 8 years. Believe it or not, I taught math from 8 years and I treated it as a language. And when I treated it as a language, the students the students picked it up a little bit more. So what I was doing was I was teaching math almost as a second language because that's what it is. It's a universal language, right? It has its own symbols, it has its own rules and conventions. And so I taught it as a language. You know what I mean? Especially because I spent a lot of time teaching algebra and algebra 2 and geometry. And those are the building blocks of math. Algebra and geometry are the building blocks because they teach you how to think. They teach you how to communicate in a mathematical way, right? And so in our class, geometry was the first math class where we learned how to do critical thinking, proofs, theorems, postulates, all those types of things go into my geometry class so that we can practice what critical thinking is really about. Because they're going to eventually go into a history class and they're eventually going to go into a political science class. And the way you critically think in geometry is going to help you in those other subjects.
expand on that a little bit in terms of there's thinking and then there's critical thinking. So
Yes.
what exactly is critical thinking, that we can pass along to these students here?
Yeah, no problem. The first part of critical thinking is actually what we call intellectual humility. You actually have to start at the beginning believing that you don't know everything. You have to, that's the first step. The first step is you have to admit that there are blind spots and there are things that I just don't know. Because once you start with intellectual humility, you now know what to do when you run up against other people who think differently. You listen instead of argue. You see things from other people's perspective. You put yourself in other people's shoes. You practice empathy. Starting with intellectual humility means admitting to yourself, I don't know everything about this subject. I know some things, but I don't know everything. And I'm going to listen twice as much as I speak. When I hear the second part is what we call cognitive dissonance, right? The more you interact with other people, the more you're going to rub up against beliefs and facts that go against what you have in your head. And psychologically, what that does is it creates this, what we call cognitive dissonance. It creates this conflict inside of us. Here, let me give you an example. A perfect example happens in math all the time, right? In elementary school, when kids are first learning how to add and subtract, right? The teacher may say something like, little Johnny has 10 cookies and he eats 3 of them. How many cookies does he have left? And they say, well, 7. And they write that on the board, 10 minus 3 equals 7. And there's a little student in there that might write 7 minus 10 equals 3. And the teacher says, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do 7 minus 10 because if you only have 7 cookies, you can't take away 10. It doesn't work. Until that student becomes a 6th grader and they learn negative numbers. And then they realize, wait a minute, I have to unlearn something, right? Because I've been operating for years under this idea that I can't do 7 minus 10. And now they have to reorient their thinking when they bump up against negative numbers. What we're finding and educational researchers are seeing who work with students all the time is learning is more about unlearning. There's a lot of things you have to unlearn and make space for new information. Those are the seeds of critical thinking, right? And so now that kid is in middle school and they're finally got the hang of these negative numbers, 7 minus 10, right? And then they bump up against a new thing, square roots, right? The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 100 is 10, because 10 times 10 is 100. Well, what's the square root of 99? Well, you can't do that. Well, yeah, you can. You got decimals. Well, what's the square root of a negative number? Well, you can't do that because you can't multiply 2 numbers together and get a negative number until they get to 11th grade, and now they know imaginary numbers, and now they have to unlearn everything they learned 2 years prior. So there's this whole unlearning that happens, and the students who do the best in school, the students who are the most successful, are the ones who are actually good at bouncing back, the ones who are good at this critical thinking, the ones who are good at the unlearning part, the ones who can rub up against something that doesn't make sense and doesn't fit, stop, reprocess, put things together in a different way, and then adopt the new information and then move on. Those are the students who do the best. And I hope what I did here is I took 5 minutes to explain a really, really complicated process, and I hope that made sense. I hope that answered your question, Brother Greg.
Yeah, sorry, I was off of mute. And I was just putting something in.
Uh-oh, you're still on mute there.
Yeah, there we go. I was putting something in the chat, which I was at a training where you'll see an equation in there, where if you add 7 plus 3 equals X, you got to solve for that.
Yeah.
But the reverse, 10 equals 7 plus X, the upper grades couldn't solve it. They had challenges with it, but the lower grades were able to solve it. So that means that what happens, they were being taught something that they weren't able to unlearn, and it was blocking that. So it just adds some complexity to it, and it's a way that you can approach. I had and this gentleman made all the world of difference for me. It was a 7th grade math teacher that made math fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we used sports scores,
Right.
as a New Yorker, so it was Knicks games and batting averages for the Mets or Yankees or what have you. And so we had to solve that, and it made math fun. And that really, I look at some of my classmates from that same class that I'm still in touch with, and from me personally, it made all the world of difference. So I think that's very important and I think some of our students have left here, but to really to embrace math as young of an age as you can, as a balance of with the arts and language.
You know what? I'm going to also now I was a math teacher first before English teacher. And so I always thought that I would teach math forever and retire as a math teacher. I absolutely loved teaching math. And then when I went to the college level, I realized I couldn't teach math because college requires you to have an advanced degree in math. And my advanced degree was in English and education. And so I started teaching English. And then once I started teaching English, I started to realize some of the differences in what the students need in both of these classes. You know, my teaching English helped me as a math person, and my teaching math actually helped me do English a lot better. I think sometimes we underestimate how important it is to really have a command over the language. Reading and writing is so important because every subject requires the students to read the textbook. History class, your politics class, your math class. There's a lot of reading, there's a lot of writing across the board, and we're not doing the best job of putting those communication skills in our students, you know, helping them develop those things so that they can now use those skills in all the other classes like math, science, engineering. Right now, what I'm realizing is that there's now whenever I teach, I'm teaching holistically, right? I no longer teach math. I don't see myself as an English teacher. I see myself as a teacher of human beings. So when they come into my English classes, they're learning about themselves. When I help people learn math and I'm doing tutoring with math, they're learning about themselves. You know, when I'm teaching future teachers how to teach in the Cal State program with the teacher supervisors, those teachers are learning about themselves. What I'm realizing is I need to help people learn how learning works. Because if you can learn how learning works, you can step into any classroom in this country and get an A. You know, it's learning how the brain works, learning how learning happens.
Speaking of brain working, when you say writing, how are they writing? Are they typing or are they actually writing?
Um, this pandemic moved so many people online that everybody's behind the screen. Everybody's behind the computer. Um, in my face-to-face classes, I still require my students to put a pen to a paper for practice and for journal writing. All my students, I buy each one of my students a journal book as a gift on the first day. And I tell them this is going to be the most important thing you have. You're going to write your private thoughts every morning, every single morning. And you're going to put pen to paper and just write for 10 minutes. And then we start class. They need to learn how to work on a computer. They need to learn how to type. They need to learn how to use the technology, but they also need to remember what writing feels like on a piece of paper. You know, and so my students are doing both. They're doing all of it in that classroom.
What's your theory on the learning process itself, or writing versus typing? I used to use I use Trello and a couple other tasks, Google tasks of sort of a to do list, and I was doing that electronically. And I've gone back to, I don't know if you guys can see that. No, I can't really see it on the background, but I actually still write things out, and I'm finding that by writing something out, it etches it into my brain better than seeing it on a screen. And maybe because I'm old guy, but that's how I learned it. But I've read and have seen some studies that the concept of actually writing something out connects better with the human brain than typing it. I don't, Does
Um,
that still hold water? Is that still something that makes sense?
well, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is if you're typing your thoughts out on a computer, that's better than nothing. Because right now there are a lot of people who are doing nothing. And the reason why it's important to write or type in the first place is because have you ever heard a lot of people say John Dewey came up with this quote, but it actually wasn't John Dewey who said this, but John Dewey is given credit for this. This idea that experience is not the best teacher. Reflection on experience is the best teacher. And it's a very important difference, right? Because you know people who probably experience things all the time and never learn their lesson, right? Because experience is not the best teacher. It's reflection on that experience. That's the best teacher, right? And the reason why that is because part of the learning process is what we call meaning making, right? For example, I could sit in the classroom and my teacher can teach me the timetables, 5 times 6 is 30. And I can just memorize that all day. 5 times 6, 5 times 6 is 30, 5 times 6 is 30. And I can write it down hundreds of times. 5 times 6 is 30. But until I make some kind of meaning out of that makes sense for me, like actually having 6 people at the dinner table and I give each one of them 5 cookies, and I start to actually process what the meaning of 5 times 6 is, that's when it sticks. And the same thing is true when you write, like you said, some people type their thoughts out and some people write it down on paper. The reason why we have to do one of those two things is because it practices our reflection, right? Now, the act of writing it on a piece of paper does something a little extra because neurologically, when you have to write on a piece of paper, you're looking at the physical page, when to break a line, you're looking at your handwriting, and all of these things are happening all at once. And research shows the more and more that we use all of these different senses, the more and more information gets stored in our long-term memory. It's kind of like, have you ever heard that saying, you never really know how much you understand something until you try and explain it to somebody else, right? There is a neurological reason why that is. Because the act of explaining something to somebody else means not only you have to know the subject, but you have to break the subject down into pieces and reassemble it in somebody else's understanding. That mental gymnastics forces you to really, really, really absorb all that information. And that's what the act of writing does on a piece of paper, You're not just looking at the words, you are composing, right? Your brain is sifting through the information. It's writing words on a paper. You're writing it in your own words, your own language. You're taking this thing, breaking it down and building it up. All of that stuff is mental gymnastics that forces things into your long-term memory. You see what you did. You're tapping into my subject, and I keep talking and talking and going on and on. Please stop me if I'm talking too much here.
Well, actually, we're going to do a lane change.
Okay.
And because you talked about writing and composition, so that's going to lead us now into your book,
Yes.
From Joker to a King. So tell us about the book, your inspiration behind it. Did you write it out first and then type it? So talk
I love
about
that.
the book.
Um, the truth of the matter is that this book here, Joker to King, actually was meant to just be a project for one person. It was a gift from my brother. Back in Christmas 2012, my younger brother DJ asked if I could teach him how to be a man. His own life was falling apart. We have a 19-year age difference, and he had dropped out of 2 community colleges. He didn't have a job anymore at the fast food place, and he felt his life was falling apart. And he asked me if it was possible to teach him how to be a man, because he knows that I'm a teacher. Could you write curriculum to teach somebody step by step how to be a man? And nobody asked me that before. And so what he did was he moved on January, New Year's Day, 2013. He moved in with me. And I re-enrolled him in college. And we would drive back and forth, because I was already going to the college. He'd be in the car, and on the commute back and forth, we're having these conversations about manhood. Everything from how to open a savings account to issues that he's having with his girlfriend, cooking tips. We're talking all these things. One day he says, "You need to get my friends in a room and tell them all the same stuff." And that's when the light bulb came on. And so what I decided to do was on his birthday in March of 2013, he was turning 22 years old, and I gave him a piece of paper and I said, "This is your first lesson on manhood. It's about integrity. It's about being a man of integrity." And I gave him a playing card, the Ace of Spades, and it was stapled to that piece of paper. And I said, "This is your very first lesson, and this is your very first card in the deck. Every week, I'm going to give you a new lesson on manhood, and every week you're going to get a new playing card. Ace of Spades, 2 of Spades. There's 52 cards in a deck. There are 52 weeks in a year. You're going to go week by week, card by card, until you finish a whole year. You finish a year, you finish the whole deck. All the spades are the lessons you need to learn. All the diamonds represent the lessons you need to learn about your financial health. All the hearts represent the lessons you need to learn about your relationships, like your parents, your girlfriend, your coworkers, your boss. All the clubs represent the lessons you need to learn about physical health in your physical environment, like how to travel, how to live in your own apartment, how to cook, how to be anti-sexist. All of these lessons, 52 lessons, it's 52 weeks in a year. You're going to get one each week.
Can you repeat spades again? Because I think your audio may have dropped out momentarily on that one.
No problem. The spades represent your emotional and mental health, your personal growth, lessons on confidence, work ethic, integrity, your purpose. This was a project that was meant for him. I had these chapters and I mapped them all out. I'm a writing professor and I'm a researcher. And so I didn't just come up with a lot of these lessons on my own. I researched. And the funny thing is, right around that time, The Nation and other sociologists were also looking at manhood and masculinity, right? There's this doctor, what's his name? Dr. Michael Kimmel on the East Coast. He wrote this book called Guyland, and he decided, we have women's studies programs in colleges. We need men's studies because it's the one thing it's the one part of psychology we never really built up, because men's mental health looks different than women's mental health. And right around that time, I'm reading all of this stuff and putting it in the book for my brother. That's when I realized, you know what, my brother's not the only one who needs to see this. I got 52 lessons. That's 52 chapters. I can just put them together and I got a book. So I worked with this publishing consultant who taught me about the publishing industry, who taught me how books become #1 on Amazon, who taught me how to take my book and get a Library of Congress number, ISBN number, barcode. I learned the publishing industry. And so all of this stuff happened with my brother in 2013, and I spent 2 years just learning the publishing industry. Then I wrote the book. Got the book, got a professional artist, designed the cover, marketed the book, and the ebook, I released it on Father's Day of 2016. It was finally launched and open to the public Father's Day 2016. 3 days later, the ebook is the most downloaded self-help book on Amazon. I'm watching the number click up and up and up, and it hit #1 in the self-help category, and it hit #1 in the gender studies category, which surprised me. So for that week, it was the most downloaded self-help book. 5 months later, I entered the book in a contest, Southern California Book Festival, and it won the grand prize. Southern California Book Festival, Independent Publisher of the Year, Independent Book of the Year. And after analyzing the data on Amazon and looking at some of the people who bought the book, it turns out women bought the book more than men. Women were buying it for their kids. Women were buying it for their boyfriends. Women were buying it for their husbands. They were buying it for their nephews. They were saying, hey, I think you need to read this. And I think back years back, way back, before I had kids, before I even got married, when I first started dating my wife and we just got married, I remember way back in 1998, she did the same thing to me. She came home one day and she gave me a book and just laid it in my lap and walked out the house. And I realized men are not buying books. You know, the publishing consultant that I was working with, he told me, you know, Robert, you're about to write a book for the exact demographic that doesn't buy books. 18 to 25-year-old young men. That's who you're targeting, but that's the one demographic that doesn't buy books. And he was right. But everybody else was buying the book for these guys. And so that was 2016. Now fast forward to this pandemic, and I went through my own issues, my own depression, my own divorce, my own health issues, financial issues. And so what I did is I went back to the Joker the King book and I did some of the lessons myself and realized I need to revise the book. And so that's where this book came. So what I'm holding up here is the second edition, which is a revised post-pandemic version of Joker the King. So it has a different, so some old chapters are not in here, but some newer ones are in here, like the relationship between men and violence. And the difference between masculinity and femininity, and the similarities between masculinity and femininity. You know, there is a lot that's in here that is personally tested, research, like every chapter is research-based because I want to make sure that folks can see that this is based in not just my expertise, but the expertise of other psychologists, sociologists, that kind of thing. So there's a chapter in here on how to cook. There's a chapter in here on forgiveness. There's a chapter in here on the financial love triangle between you, your spouse, and money. Because it is
that. What card is that? The Joker?
That's the Queen of Diamonds.
Queen of Diamonds.
Oh,
Queen of Diamonds. Okay.
Speaking of that, there's now a little Joker chapter and a big Joker chapter because those are parts of the deck also, right?
You have 3 favorite cards? What are lessons in there that you would highlight?
the Ace of Spades,
Okay.
which is about integrity. The Five of Hearts, which is about um, the five.
Five heartbeats.
It's called the five gifts of the heart, right? Forgiveness, trust, love, compassion, and mercy. That's what that chapter is all about.
Ace of Spades, Five of Hearts, and what's the other one?
I have a chapter on there on the importance of having a side hustle. Why every single person needs to have a side hustle. You know, whether you have a full-time job or maybe you're a student, you need to have a way to generate money out on your own outside of a 9-to-5 job. Not just because of the extra money, but because of the psychological thing it does for you, you know. So those are some of my favorite chapters. I know there's some now because I'm an English instructor, English professors, we have a unique opportunity to pick whatever book we want to use to teach writing. And so I'm using my book in my college classes. My book is the textbook in English 101. So the students are learning how to write. The students are learning how to read. They're learning college writing because that's what I'm hired to do, but they're doing it using my book. And so I get feedback from the students which chapters hit and which chapters didn't hit, you know? And because I self-published this book, I can always adjust it. So for example, even though the book is a guide to manhood, when I use it in my class, I use a guide to adulthood for the men and the women, because it really is about learning how to be a healthy adult, you know? So those are some of the favorite lessons in there.
Cool. Crystal, you have a question? Like we're getting, I'm intrigued here, and I lost track of time. I was like, whoa, we're like 11:55.
Yeah, we went over 2 hours on the Business Zone when he was on the show. He was so intriguing. I actually bought the book for my nephew. One, he graduated. That was his part of his graduation present. And then the other young man is already 30. He's like, oh, I like this book. So he's into chapter 1. I'm reading it. I think it's an excellent read for every young man. And Dr. Brown indicated that he's working one for women. He's doing a third book. But I think it's so important that our young people have mentorships and books that are directly relating to what they're going through life. And we all know life skills is not something that they learn. They don't learn how to live on their own, especially this last group of kids who are born to the millennials. They don't want them to suffer, so therefore they know how to do nothing because they don't want them to suffer. So I just enjoyed the book myself, and I enjoyed the interview we had. So this one will be available, but you can go over to the Business Zone and hear 2 hours of Dr. Brown speaking, and it was an incredible interview because he really delved into his own usage of his book, and so that's all I have to say. Thank you for joining us today as well. And I'm going to bounce that back over to you, Greg.
Actually, Stephen, who do we have next week? You're on mute.
Next week, first of all, Dr. Robert Brown, thank you for your insightful comments and words about education. I saw you have the Joker, the card in the background. Next week, we have a colleague of mine named Michael Harlan, who makes black cards. And Greg, I have a set for you, for alphas. He has a set of cards. They're designated by all the different HBCUs and the fraternities. So next week it will be Mike Harlan on the community briefing, 11 o'clock Pacific time.
Awesome, awesome. We also have Juneteenth, so a lot of people are celebrating, observing Juneteenth on the on I think it's next Wed. Is it next Wednesday? Next
Wednesday,
Wednesday,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Next Wednesday. I do know some, and I'm not quite sure what's behind it. I probably do know what's behind it, but I haven't researched it. But a number of the celebrations are being canceled for whatever reason. So Leimert Park has canceled theirs. I think in Chicago they've canceled theirs. But please observe Juneteenth that represents our ancestors and what they went through, and thank God that they did go through it, because we wouldn't be here today. And when you really understand what has gone on behind the scenes. The other part I am going to say, guys, we are gearing up. I think we're about what, 4 months away from voting. At this point, we need to be completely focused in on voting because voting is going to be really serious on in November. So please encourage all of your friends and family, especially your young people. Help them to do their research so they understand what they're voting for and why they're voting for it. I truly believe our freedom is at stake. And for those of us that are Black and brown people, that is personified when it comes to us and our freedom. And so, but I think all American people our freedom is at stake. So this election is extremely important. So make sure you're well versed and start doing your research now. So when the ballot comes out, you are ready for voting. And if you're in states like Georgia, Oklahoma, Illinois, there's some major stuff happening. Ohio, you guys really need to really do your research. So that's what I have to say.
Right on. Well, thank you, Dr. Brown, for joining us today. I mean, education is important. As I alluded to earlier, there are activities and things at play to uh, push people away from education, to have their minds caught up in either music or Netflix or TikTok or things that aren't developing the critical thinking. So we applaud you for what you're doing to help educate the youth. I am certain. Oh, I got one question. So you had a success story, a student that has like come back to you. You know, imagine one that's, that 5, 10, 15 years ago, and came back and said, what a difference you might have made for them. Have a quick story on that.
The biggest success story is my brother, because his life completely changed. This is somebody who the only person I know who got an F in football,
Okay.
but has succeeded beyond anybody's expectations. He graduated, got his bachelor's.
All right.
A couple of weeks ago, he just got his master's in business information technology. He works for Cal State, and he got Cal State to pay for it. That's the other thing. He works for Cal State Teach as their technology guru. So he's running the technology behind the Cal State Teach program. He just moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and he is now. So he says, you know what? I got to catch up to you and get that doctorate. So he's now contemplating getting this doctorate at Georgia Tech. But I have students in my own classes who have read the book. The book changes lives. I had a student who came back about 2 years later, just completely randomly, searching the campus for me, got a counselor to tell her where my classroom is. She came into the classroom, stood in front of my class, in front of my students, and said, if it wasn't for this class, I wouldn't be a U.S. citizen. It's those kinds of things. We're tapping into changing people's lives. healing trauma, getting people to, in fact, I'm going to tell you right now, anybody in Southern California, if you can make your way to Riverside on Sunday, the 23rd, not this Sunday is Father's Day, so I want all the men take the day off. But on the 23rd, the next Sunday, the Civil Rights Institute in Riverside, California, is sponsoring a Joker the King annual brunch. It's a men's brunch, or actually breakfast, because it's at 9 o'clock. But it's a breakfast. You get a free book. You get a T-shirt. You get the Joker the King planner. And all you have to do is just RSVP and let us know how many people are coming so we can have the right head count. The whole thing is free. Civil Rights Institute is sponsoring the whole thing because they want to make this an annual event.
How can they get your book?
JokerToKing.com.
JokerKing.com. Okay.
JokerToKing.com.
I put it in the chat, Greg.
You can find the book. You can listen to the podcast because there's a YouTube channel, Spotify channel, iTunes. You can read articles. You could even sign up for the Joker the King breakfast.
And there
Great.
it is again. So there it is. I got to run, guys. Thank you, Dr. Brown. I got kids that are finishing up lunch, so I need to make sure that they get back up here to where I am. Bye-bye, guys. Happy Father's Day to everyone. Mentors, surrogates, uncles, any involvement with young people. Happy Father's Day to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Fantastic. Thank you all. And we'll see you next Thursday, 11 o'clock Pacific.
Appreciate it. Thank you.